Good afternoon, Your Honor. Thank you for the opportunity that you're providing both to myself and to the rest of the families and acquaintances of the folks associated with this horrible case. My name is Michael Carlson, and I'm appearing here today both as an individual and a brother to one of the victims of November 21st. I'm here today as well as a plaintiff joining a criminal complaint against Mr. Brooks, with a claim against him for the damage that he has brought not only to Waukesha, but to my family. And I'm also appearing as a posthumous spokesman for the victim, my sister, Tamara Durand, who can't appear here today on her own behalf because Mr. Brooks killed her. In my personal aspect, I wish I could as easily forget about Mr. Brooks as he has seemingly forgotten about himself. Every day since November 21st has been framed by what he did in my own life and our family's life. It is the reality I wake to. It is the reality I head to work to. It is the reality I confront as I try to fall asleep. It's the reality I confront as I go about the things I do during the day, my attempts to work, attempts to manage a household and be present for my children, and maintaining any sort of notion of normalcy in our life. But all these actions are simply a pantomime, Mr. Brooks, to forget that my sister was so stupidly and so needlessly killed by you. Perhaps you can forget what you did, but I can't. November 21 looms as a ground zero day in the story of my life, as I know it does in the life of so many others. I appear today also as a plaintiff. Mr. Brooks, you asked the court to identify a plaintiff many times during the course of the trial. Here I am. I'm one of many. We, the people, have brought this case and these judgments against you, Mr. Brooks. They reflect our values as a people and are enacted through laws passed by our legislatures, enforced by our law enforcement, and administered through our courts. We, the people, find you guilty. A lifetime is a long time to think and to spout nonsense. And Mr. Brooks, I want you to take no comfort in your future here in this comic book cartoon world that you've created for yourself, involving the flags and barcodes and birth certificates. This is all nonsense, the stuff of teenage boys on the internet. That's not why you're here today. That's not why we're here today. We're here today, and you are here today because you got in a car and instead of hitting the brakes, ran over children, elderly, and my sister, Tamara. I don't want you to live in the comfort of that delusion as you live there in the court, as you live there in the prison, convincing yourself that you're the victim of something, of some crazy internet conspiracy. You're not, Mr. Brooks. You're guilty only of your own actions on that day, actions that you had an infinite number of times to stop. Any number of times you could have just hit those brakes, turned the other direction. As it stands, I'm a plaintiff, but I'm not a victim. The victim is Tamara Durand, my sister. She can't appear here on her own behalf because she's dead. She died when Mr. Brooks killed her on November 21st. Because Tamara cannot be here to speak, I will speak for her. Darrell Brooks, you took my life. I wish you hadn't. I had people to live for, people who needed me. My parents who are aging, my children who need their mother to help them make sense of their worlds, to cheer them on, to help them into their adulthood, to become friends with them. I have my grandson who relies on me, his grandmother, as much as I relied upon my own grandmother as I was growing up. I had people who needed me to cheer them on, to have me bring goodwill to the hospital bed where they were, or their families in the waiting room, who needed the comfort and prayers I brought to them in their moments of pain. I have friends who need to hear from me and families that need my early morning phone calls. I had places I wanted to see and things I needed to do. The only saving grace is I didn't know what hit me. And who would have ever guessed? Who could ever believe it? It's no surprise to anyone who knew me. After you hit me in that car, I got back up and kept dancing. I hardly skipped a beat. I didn't know you, Mr. Brooks. If the picture were reversed, if you were the stranger in the street in pain, needing care or comfort, know that I would have helped you. I ran towards pain and I ran into danger in my life. All you had to do was ask, and you might have danced along with us. It was a parade, after all. We both died in vain on November 21st, Mr. Brooks. I died to life, and you now die to the world. We leave lives behind, family behind, children behind us. We both leave dreams, we leave choices, we leave successes, we leave failures behind us. I die to mine in an instant, you die to yours over countless days. May the God I'm with grant you the courage to confront what you've done and to remember your own name. It's the least you might do for all these that you've left behind us who can never forget. Mr. Brooks, I'd also like to acknowledge that over these last couple months, I've sent you a couple letters in prison urging you to stand up, to be a man, to grow up, to accept accountability for what you've done. I also used those letters to share with you the love of the God that I believe in and that I know my sister Tamara believed in. I use those letters to share with you especially the story of the final act of Christ on the cross, where he is hanging between two murderers. And he turns to the one and he gives them forgiveness. I urge you to remember, Mr. Brooks, that there were two murderers on that day. One who mocked the holy living in God, and one who accepted accountability for who he was. Your Honor, I urge you to provide Mr. Brooks a lifetime in prison to please contemplate that story and to remember his name and to contemplate which side of Christ he wishes to hang on. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.